I don't think we should all be making our own clothes. I hope you'll stick with me and work on some Rolex with me while I kind of get this off my chest. Okay, I'm starting with some of the fluff that I had left over from my first set of Rolex. If you haven't seen my Valentine's Day Rolex video, go back and check that out. I am trying to blend up a few hundred grams of these pretty pinks. I only got one like 35-gram skein done last time, and I've got a lot more to go. So that's what I'm going to be working on during today's discussion, and I hope you enjoy watching as I just chat about some of these ideas that I had. So I attended a conference last week about district energy systems. If I haven't explained yet, I'm an engineer, and in my day job, I do a lot of work around decarbonizing a district energy system, specific one, and energy efficiency. I won't bore you with all the details, but at this conference, I really got to thinking about my making. Hear me out. I don't think we should all be making our own clothes. I said, hear me out. I'm a fiber artist. I'm going to be working on some more of my Rolex today, and I enjoy making my own clothes. But I also want to recognize that this is a luxury that I have because I've managed to find the time as a resource, money as a resource, and then the actual resource, the fiber in this instance. And I want to break that down in talking about the sustainability of it in both time and money and resources, but also tie in a little bit of my day job as energy and carbon emissions, kind of bring that all together. So I hope you'll stick with me and work on some Rolex with me while I kind of get this off my chest. This time I'm going to be a little bit better about kind of pre-prepping the fiber. I think it'll help a little bit more in making smoother Rolex. I saw someone else using their flicker brush, and it actually showed in a little more detail to where I could understand it, that the brush is going like this against the tines, so kind of pushing it down. I think I'll try that. And it seems, except for at the beginning. Okay, maybe I need to push it down a little bit more first. There we go. Let me go back and get my packing brush. So stick with me for a second while I explain what decarbonizing means. Decarbonizing is removing the carbon emissions from something. And in my case, I do a lot of heating and cooling systems as a mechanical engineer. So for me, that means that a lot of heating systems use like natural gas or propane, something like that, as their fuel source for generating heat. For these large district energy systems, and what I mean by that is like a large heating or cooling system that serves like a hospital or an airport or a university campus. And they use natural gas as a fuel source for a lot of their heating. And there's new rules and regulations nationwide that might incentivize or require these systems to switch from natural gas to electricity. So that would be decarbonizing. And as I'm sitting in this conference, I'm hearing of these large systems that are decarbonizing and reducing their carbon emissions by hundreds of thousands of tons. You know, these really, really big numbers, and there's multiple campuses across multiple states and countries, all doing similar things. And that's a large number of reducing our carbon footprint. It's impressive and it's really great work. So I got to thinking, as fiber artists, like, what is our impact as we try to be more sustainable in our making? Like, if I were to avoid buying a cotton t-shirt, for example, and might buy it secondhand or make it from a sustainable resource, then maybe I'm reducing my carbon emissions by a couple kilograms. It's not a lot. I even thought, it's like, well, what if every single person in this conference decided to not buy a new outfit? Well, just one new outfit in a given year. What impact would that have? And the avoided carbon on that was still only a fraction of a percent of some of these other big campuses. And that really caught me off my guard. I'm like, then why bother? Like, why should I be trying to make my own clothes or anything with the fiber arts other than just because I want to, right? So before you break out your pitchforks and start coming for me, I'm not saying we shouldn't be making our own clothes. In fact, by the end of this video, I might actually be saying, like, we probably should be still making our own clothes. But lately I've been getting the feeling about my making that I am contributing to overconsumerism. I have the feeling that buying new supplies for my making feels like I'm contributing to a system that just perpetuates more carbon emissions. It perpetuates more wealth disparity and promotes this idea that we just need more stuff. And it hasn't set well with me because I enjoy making and I enjoy the process and I enjoy this as a slow craft. And unfortunately, this is a craft that needs supplies. So, well, do I just not buy new supplies? Sometimes that is the answer, right? Like using from my stash, using the stuff that I've already purchased, buying secondhand, reusing things that I've made but recognize that I don't really wear or use. Or finally, when buying new, buying from a source that is local and sustainable, because those are not always the same thing either. So let me give you the example again of the cotton t-shirt. So it might only emit about a couple of kilograms of carbon in the making process. And theoretically, a good quality cotton t-shirt should last for a while, get lots of uses out of it, and the carbon emitted per use could go down. If we are mindful about using it until, mending it as much as possible, over dyeing it if it gets stained, things like that, we can be very mindful about that purchase. Similarly, if we were to make a shirt out of, say, cotton or wool, we likely would be emitting an approximately similar amount of carbon, as potentially more or less, depending on where that material comes from. If we're buying, say, like cotton yarn to knit up a cotton summer top, that yarn could come from across the world and be shipped to us via container ship, which uses gas, or trucks, which use gas. And that emits a lot of carbon in getting that material transported to us. There's also carbon emitted in the making process as well. The manufacturer of that yarn could be very, very energy inefficient or water inefficient in their making process. And so there's no saying necessarily when you buy a commercial yarn, unless you do a lot of research, that material uses any fewer resources than just buying a new t-shirt off the shelf. However, in our making or buying process, we could make smarter decisions. We could decide to buy a ready to wear item of clothing from a manufacturer that is sustainable, is more local to us, and therefore uses fewer resources in the production of that item. Same thing with the crafting aspect. You could buy wool or roving or yarn from a local shepherd or mill, and that theoretically should use fewer resources in the making and be more sustainable for sure. So next I kind of want to mention the luxury of making, because oftentimes I do feel like the ability to craft is a luxury. And for some of us, it might be a necessity for, say, mental health or rest and relaxation. And I think that's hugely important. I agree with that. It's something that I kind of need to be able to stay sane in a very busy modern lifestyle. But it is a luxury. I have the time to be able to do this. Sometimes struggle or wish I had more time with it, but I do have the time because I have the resources to make the time. I also have the money to do it. I have a good job. My husband has a good job. And so far we've been very fortunate with being able to maintain those jobs for a significant number of years. And not everyone has that luxury. I can afford to buy new materials while many other people can't. Some people can only afford to buy the options that are more cost effective. And unfortunately, a lot of times that is the materials that are more cheaply produced. They're often, let's say, cheaper yarns are often petroleum based. They are acrylic or polyester or lower quality, say like cottons. And that is what is accessible for some people to be able to do their making. And I'm not trying to gatekeep that. What I would like to say is that those of us who have the luxury of being able to make and the income to make sustainable buying choices, that we should be doing so to scale our impact as a community. Because I'm a math person, let me do some math. And right now I can't multitask and do math at the same time, even if I am an engineer. So say you buy a sweater quantities of yarn, maybe 8 to 10 skeins at $30 or $40 each. Rounding that might be $200 to $300 to buy a sweater quantity worth of hand dyed, locally produced yarn. And some of us knit faster than others, some of us slower, depending on time and skill, or I don't want to say skill. I'm not saying that slow knitters are less skilled, not at all. Please don't come at me for that either. If you wanted to make several sweaters a year, it may not be cost effective for you to make that decision for your budget. And so that other people, in order to be able to make at the quantity or rate that they want to make, may have to make more affordable budget decisions, buying cheaper options or secondhand or reused yarn options. And that means that those of us that have the luxury of having higher incomes or more resources at our disposal should be using our buying power to drive the market, because the market is created when there is a supply. When the market is driven when there is a demand, the supply comes. So when I say don't make your own clothes, I'm not actually saying don't make your own clothes. What I'm saying is don't make your own clothes if you're assuming that is what's going to make you have a less of an impact on the climate and on our environment and in the global economy of things. The making of your clothes is not the thing that makes you more sustainable. It's it's really the resources you are using and where you are spending your money. Especially because there are other ways that you could have a larger impact. For example, instead of making, I could be working more, which is not sustainable personally, but I could be having a much larger impact if I was doing more of what I was doing, or more reasonably, if there were more people like me doing what I'm doing. And it's a growing field industry, if you will. I'm very excited about it. But it does give me pause sometimes that if I wanted to have a bigger impact, I could be doing more, if that makes sense, than crafting. But I need the crafting. I need the crafting for my own well being. But there are decisions that we could be making that would have a larger impact. Things like using less energy in our homes, or eating less meat, or maybe even taking public transit. There are a lot of more sustainable options that could have a larger impact than making your own sweater. And I think that if I can use this platform for anything, it would be to help educate other people that may not have the type of background that I have in engineering, who may come from other communities or other situations where maybe it's just not as common knowledge as the community that I am in. I spoke so much about where we could be spending our money. Well, what could our fiber producers be doing to be more sustainable and to have less of an impact on our environment? The first things that I can think of are always using fewer resources to produce the the craft or the fiber or the cloth, whatever it is. So that's being more energy efficient, using less water, and being more mindful about things like the type of chemicals in dyes or soaps or what have you that we're using to process the fiber. That's where my expertise lies, well, at least on the energy side. So if you're a fiber producer who happens to be watching my content and has gotten this far in the video, let me just do a shout out to say I would love to help you guys out. If you're curious about how you could be more energy efficient in your making process, shoot me a DM on Instagram or email me. I'll drop my email down below. And I'd love to connect you with local resources on how you might be able to get incentives or grants to make your facility where you produce more energy or water efficient. Always, I could provide recommendations, things like, swap out fluorescent lights with LEDs, or put in new weather sealing around your doors and windows. But everyone's facility is different, and where you are is different. And so my recommendations might be different depending on who you are and where you are in the world or in the country. Like I said, I'd love to hear from you guys if you're curious and you want to know more about how you can make your fiber production more efficient. I'd love to help. Let me know. I'm really struggling with packing down my bats. My flicker brush is kind of short and it's gotten a little messed up. And my packing brush is really obviously catching on a lot of the fiber. And so this is not going as well as I would like. But I am experimenting now with using my wool comb to see if that helps. And so this is not going to be like Instagram worthy real content, but I think it's working. So let me show you. this to say that in 2026, I think I want to be more mindful about where I'm spending my money on my craft and what I am making. And not in a, I'm not going to buy any more yarn. I'm not going to like, I do intend to buy more yarn. I do intend to buy more fiber throughout 2026 eventually. And I want to be more intentional about that. I want to buy more local. I want to support more local businesses, and I want to support my local fiber economy. And I also want to make with intention. I get caught up in the mainstream over consumption materials as well. I'd love to make all of the trendy sweaters, but I need to be honest with myself that I may not wear all the trendy sweaters. And I need to make things that I will actually wear, that family or friends will actually wear, and recognize that if I want to make something just for the sake of making, that's okay too, but realize where it's coming from. I think I'll end with another math problem and try to encourage all of you who might be watching this video. Right now, I'm only getting a few hundred views on my video, which means maybe a couple hundred people are watching this content. But assuming that you guys are all makers and that you will be purchasing supplies to make this year, I'll use the math example of a knitter again at making a sweater. So if we all were to purchase a sweater quantity's worth of yarn or wool, if you spin this year, and spend, say, to even just $100, which is very, very effective. I mean, it's very cost effective, that is. Then you multiply 100 times 200 people watching this, then that's $20,000. And I feel like I have a small reach at the moment, but if we were to use that money and invest $20,000 in our community, if we were to assume all of you guys were located in my same community, then that could be substantially, making a way towards someone earning a living through a sustainable local fiber arts business. I think we have impact there. We have a voice and we have buying power. And in some ways, that might give us a sense of control over our local and current political and economic climate. So I'd love it if you guys watching so far would maybe drop a comment down below about whether or not you've thought about your making and whether or not you might be willing to make a commitment in 2026 about I'm going to have an impact on my local fiber economy. If that's something you feel strongly about, I'd love to hear, and I'd love to hear how we might be able to make an impact on our local community. And again, if you're interested in learning more about how we can be more energy or resource conscious in our making, again, hit me up on Instagram or send me an email and I would love to help. So I hope you enjoyed crafting with me today. And if you like this content, would love it if you would consider subscribing, giving a like, those are free, and or dropping a comment down below. And I will see you guys next time.